Hi, folks. A very warm welcome to season 5, episode 5 of the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the practical power of shamanic journey work. Now, if you had have asked me 3 years ago, Emma, do you ever see yourself becoming a shamanic practitioner or calling yourself a shaman? The answer would have been no. Are you insane? But it's how the path has evolved that I am on. It's how my life has kind of evolved. It's something I fell into and stumbled across, really. And it is a philosophy and a way of being that I find really appealing since I've started adding shamanism into my daily practice as a way of living my life. I'm a lot happier. I'm a lot more at peace with myself. I'm a lot more harmonious in most of the aspects of my life. So it's a really powerful thing for me to be talking about here. And I'm really excited that I've started to offer shamanic journey work for clients and soul retrievals and power animal retrievals, which I will tell you a little bit more about just now. But let's talk about what shamanism is to start off with before we dive into what journey work is. I think a lot of people hear the word shaman and think of feathers and smoke and being really weird. And possibly the first thing that pops into your mind is an image of a Native American person with a feathery headdress when you think of the word shaman. And to talk through it's always very interesting to talk about lineages of who's learning what from who. I have learnt shamanic practices from a shaman who has learnt from a Peruvian lineage. So a lot of what I will talk about in the work I do is the Andean medicine wheel. I'll talk about the 4 directions, but shamanism itself is a cross-cultural, ancient, nature-based healing practice that evolved prior to organized religion, which obviously just came in and smashed all the way through anything nature-based or indigenous or harmonious, because the two definitely don't gel. It was happening across the world way before organized religion arrived, and there has been evidence of shamanic practices in Siberia, in Europe, in Africa, obviously North and South America, Australia. It was a worldwide ancient philosophy. And I think we're coming full circle back to very nature-based, earth-based ways of being because we're all, well, not enough of us, but many of us are disillusioned with this capitalist, patriarchal, greedy society where we don't live in harmony with the natural world. We just take from it. And then we wonder why there's catastrophes like global warming and flooding and fires because we haven't stewarded the natural world well enough. And one of the big appeals for me of shamanism is this earth steward piece and living in harmony with nature and your surroundings. And it's really living in right relationship at its core. So it is living in harmony with your surroundings, living in harmony with the land, living in harmony with nature, living in harmony with each other, and living in harmony with yourself. One of the big cores of shamanism is reciprocity, so giving and receiving, and not taking more than you need. And I think the world could learn some lessons from that. And when we come to digress slightly, when we come to actually how shamanism works as a practical philosophy for healing and helping people, it is a way of being able to work beyond your analytical mind, to access insight, to resolve imbalance, and to reconnect with your own innate guidance system. It isn't a belief system per se, it's very experiential. So you don't have to believe in something to do shamanic work. It's not a religion. It's a way of being in my opinion, and it's how I interpret it and it's how I live and teach it. It is a way of being. It is a way of showing up in the world. It's a way of living. It's a way of life, really. So if we talk about what does a shaman do, why would you come to a shaman? So traditionally, shamans are people who restore right relationships. So whether that's health-wise, spiritually, emotionally, physically, And they do this by being a bridge between ordinary awareness or ordinary reality and non-ordinary awareness or reality. And a shaman will journey between the world that we are in into non-ordinary awareness or non-ordinary reality. And they will journey to go and get insights, knowledge, guidance, or some sort of healing that then they can bring back to where they're here and now, share with the person who they are working with and helping to heal, and then helping them to integrate. So if you've listened to my podcast, you'll know I'm a little bit anti things that are very ethereal and very theoretical and very up in the ether of wouldn't that be nice? And that would be a fantastical way of being. Shamanism is very practical. So if, for instance, I am doing a journey, I'm either guiding somebody on a journey or I'm taking a journey for somebody into non-ordinary awareness to get information. It's what we do with that information that makes shamanism so powerful. So I could come back with a load of insights for you, tell you, and you go, oh, that's really interesting. And oh, how did you know that? And oh, there's no way you would have known that information. A bit like a psychic medium would. But if you don't use that information to make your life better in your day-to-day reality, it's of no use. So it's inherently practical. I'm looking at it when I'm working with clients and I'm using shamanism as a tool and a methodology for people, is how does the information we find or the insights or the intuition, whatever that comes back from a journey, how do you apply that to your life? So it's different when you're sitting at your desk fighting with emails. So it's different when your 5-year-old won't put their shoes on and you need to go out. So it's different when you're in conflict with your spouse. That is where it's powerful, is when it's integrated. And my coaching training allows me to really deeply help people integrate shamanic insights, because otherwise it's like everything else. You go for a tarot card reading, you go for a psychic reading, you have an astrology reading. If you don't do anything actively with the information you get, it was just a really fun exercise in insight. And if you don't do anything with it, it doesn't shift the needle, it doesn't move things forward. So we can have a look at if a shaman journeys to non-ordinary reality. It can be as literal or as metaphorical as you want it to be. This is the thing. You don't have to believe that there is another reality that a shaman travels to, because we've got really no way of knowing actually what's happening. So shamans will journey to the lower world to go, and that's where we go and retrieve things, or the upper world, which is where their spiritual guides will often be, and ancestors. So you can look at this as either literally journeying to those worlds, which is cool, or you can look at it from a metaphorical level of, if you're going to the lower world to find things that are lost, you're journeying into the unconscious mind. So whether you're guiding or I'm guiding a client to journey into their own unconscious mind and get insights, or whether I'm journeying on their behalf to go and get insights, we can look at it, we're journeying into your psyche. So you don't need to have an altered belief system to benefit from it, because our unconscious minds work in metaphor, they work in imagery, they work in symbols, they work in feelings. And when you can bring that back for somebody, or somebody picks that up on a journey, and you can, it's about interpreting it. So a shaman isn't a guru. They're not doing the work per se for somebody. I think this is something I massively object to in spiritual terms, coaching terms. I think a lot of people outsource their power to a healer. They outsource their power to a coach. They outsource their power to somebody. And shamanism really puts you back in touch with your own insights, and a shaman will help you interpret that and integrate it. That's where the power lies with it. It isn't about somebody doing the work for you, because nobody else can. So if we have a look at what's shamanic journey work, what does it mean if I say to you, I'm going to take you on a shamanic journey and we're going to go and uncover something? What the hell does that even mean? So it's a guided process, and either I will journey on your behalf, or I will guide you to journey, and we'll go and see what we're looking for. So a journey always starts with an intention. What are we journeying for. So personally, I have used shamanic journey work really powerfully if there have been things that are blocking me. Often we can have a lot of intellectual insight about why we behave in a specific way, why we have a specific reaction to something, why something triggers us. We can kind of intellectually know this is why I'm blocked from making progress because I have low self-worth. So let's take that for instance. But insight isn't enough. Insight's 50% of the challenge. You know, self-awareness is really useful. But if you can't get past the insight, you can't instigate any sort of change. And shamanic journey work allows you really to go underneath that level of insight, to get past the resistance that you experience and have a greater understanding of perhaps where it came from. Sometimes when we know where something came from, we can go, oh, now I get it. It can give us an insight into just having a deeper understanding of something. And often when we fully understand something, we're able to go, actually, I'm going to choose not to do that anymore. I am going to be very conscious of choosing a different response in a moment. Or I am going to do some ancestral healing work. I am going to do some inner child healing work. It's a stepping stone into the next part of the journey of changing your life for the better in the way that you wish to change it. And what we're doing is we're digging into that subconscious level of our lives, whether we're in our subconscious mind, whether we're actually going to the lower world to go and find things, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the insight you get that you can interpret and then you can really integrate. So it becomes practical, it becomes an embodied shift. So for instance, I did a journey a while ago. I actually did three days of journey work. I mean, I was journeying for an hour. I wasn't journeying for 3 days, but I had a download of doing 3 days of journey work. And I was trying to get an understanding of how I was being blocked with making some progress in my business. No matter what I did, nothing shifted, nothing changed. It was really frustrating. And I did a journey that ended up with my grandma joining in. So again, when we come back to, did Grandma Al actually join me? Possibly. We're never really going to know. Or did she join me from the depths of my mind? It doesn't matter. What matters is I went on a journey and I got some really powerful insight that I am carrying a lineage, an ancestral lineage from Grandma Al and probably past Grandma Al of believing that women are worthless. And I got that insight by having some imagery come up. It's often very visual when you do shamanic journey work, depending on how your mind flows. You might get words, you might get sensations. I get a lot of visuals. And I did some journey work and got an understanding that Grandma Al carried a belief that women are worthless. And it made sense to me. And I thought, well, that's a belief that's been carried down. If I look at without oversharing too much of my family history, but if I look at what's transpired in relationships, in work situations, in financial situations with my grandma and my mother and me, it makes perfect sense that I'd also be carrying the belief women are worthless. And having an understanding that I've got this belief, it isn't actually mine, but I'm carrying the lineage of it. I was able to do some deep healing work with ancestral work to send healing back up the ancestral line, to actually just say to my ancestral line, I don't want to carry this anymore. This is yours. It isn't mine. It's been a game changer to have that because I went, oh, that's why I self-sabotage. That's why I procrastinate. That's why I will be really motivated to sit down and do something and then go, oh, maybe I won't do that. Because if I'm carrying a belief that women are worthless, then ergo facto, my work is worthless. There's no point trying. And so it goes on. So sometimes it's just having that understanding, which intellectually I didn't have that understanding of, oh, this is what I'm carrying. There's where the healing work is. And there's work to do on a big belief like that. It's not just as simple as like, I don't want that anymore, here you go. But that's a starting point for it. And then I started to notice, where does this show up? How can I rewrite this belief? That's where things like thought work come into play. That's where things like inner child healing come into play. So it's a starting point. But without the journey, without doing the journey work, I would not have had that insight, and I would have not known where to start with doing this, and I would have just kept perpetuating the same patterns over and over and over again. It's frustrating. So it is, it's practical. That's what I say when it's practical. We don't need to read too much into the actual journey experience. Because like I said, whether it's real, whether Grandma Al actually arrived, or whether it's from the depths of my unconscious, it doesn't matter. What matters is what information and insight did I get from it, and how have I integrated it so that I can move my life forwards and it's better. That's the thing that underpins it and why it's so, so powerful. It can be perceived as being very woo-woo. Probably what I've just said might sound a little bit woo-woo and out there. Shamanic language includes words like spirit and power animal and soul retrieval, and it can all sound a little bit mystical and a little bit out there. But when you translate it into actual psychological language and you translate it into what it really represents, it becomes recognizable and it makes a lot of sense. So if we're talking about soul retrieval, for instance, if I do a soul retrieval for somebody, I am going to journey on their behalf to the lower world to retrieve soul fragments that they have lost along the way as life buffets us and trauma happens and difficult things happen. I'm going to journey, I'm going to go find those lost soul parts, and I'm going to come and I'm going to help somebody repair and replace those lost parts so they're moving forwards in wholeness. Sounds completely out there, right? But when we replace soul loss and soul fragments, and we call it trauma-based disassociation, suddenly when we apply psychological language to it, it makes sense. It's the same thing, just with a different label. If we're talking about power animals, for instance, that can sound completely mental. What's a power animal? How do I have one of those? What would I do with a porcupine that's a power animal? But if we replace power animal with embodied inner resource, suddenly, because it sounds a bit more official, it makes sense. And power animals are amazing. They're on a shamanic level, they're spirit allies. But on a practical level, they are archetypes that we can tap into, and we can say, what can I learn from this animal that's my power animal? What qualities can I start to tap that this animal has that I can start to use to make my life better? So I think I just threw porcupine out there randomly. So if your power animal was a porcupine, and you are somebody who's a people pleaser, and you're somebody who's constantly fawning because you're too frightened to stand up for yourself, because you're worried about disappointing people, or you're worried about getting shouted at, if you tapped porcupine, porcupine has an amazing defense system. It's covered in quills. So from the front, they're super sweet. But if one reverses into you at speed, you're going to stay away. So how could you tap porcupine's amazing defense strategy and its ability to stand up for itself when it needs to? So if you're working with the qualities of porcupine, it's amazing. How can you use the qualities of porcupine to change your behavior in a situation where normally you would roll over and not stand up for yourself? It's as simple as that. So a power animal retrieval will be something that I would guide a client on. I'll take them on a journey. I'll guide them. And I'll help you retrieve a power animal, and then we can start to talk about how would you tap the qualities of this animal? How do you integrate that into your everyday life? Really powerful, but it's really simple and it's really practical. So the thing I haven't talked to you about, I've got a bit of a list here. I'm trying to stick to my script, but I'm not winning, is what exactly happens with a shamanic journey. So I will use, whether I'm journeying or whether I'm guiding somebody on a journey, I will drum or rattle. And the thing with drumming or rattling it starts to, when your mind focuses on the drumming or the rattling, it puts you into a theta brainwave state. So people will talk about entering a trance or going into non-ordinary reality. And I think when we picture people in a trance, we kind of picture people who are high on drugs at a rave who, you can't get through to. And that is not what happens with a shamanic journey. So if I'm journeying, I will be drumming. I will close my eyes and I will allow myself to focus on the drum beat. So it just relaxes my mind a little bit. So I'm a bit more open to being able to travel deep into my psyche and go and find whatever I need to find. I will journey with an intention. So what's the intention of the journey? I will drum or rattle. But at any time, I can stop drumming, open my eyes, and be back in the room. I'm not disappearing off anywhere. There's nothing kind of crazy about it. You don't lose control. You don't lose consciousness. It isn't like taking psychedelic drugs where you're going to be ejected into a different stratosphere. It's not. But it is calming your brain down. So it's like a guided meditation, essentially, but it just goes a little bit deeper. So it's very safe. It's there's nothing kind of mystical or strange about it. And again, to come back to how do we put this into practical terms, nobody really questions hypnosis anymore, or various forms of therapy where somebody is doing rapid eye movement therapy. Shamanic stuff is in the same realms as those kinds of things. So it isn't as strange as perhaps we'd all being kind of led to believe, to be honest. So, and what we'll do is if I've done guided somebody on a journey, I will, as I'm drumming and rattling and I'm guiding the person on their shamanic journey and I'm helping them kind of get to where they need to go, we'll open the door for spirit guides to arrive, or messengers to arrive, or messages from your psyche to arrive. I will have the client just tell me whilst they're journeying what's coming up for them. And then when we've completed the journey and we've come back and we're both back in the middle world, we've stopped drumming and we're all back in our normal consciousness, we'll unpack what's come up. And I will guide my client to interpret what they have found, what it means, what it's a metaphor for. Our minds work in metaphor and they respond really well to metaphor and stories. So we can start to unpack what's happening. And why this shamanic work is so good for helping to heal trauma and helping to heal, it is trauma, but big T and little t trauma. We don't have to go into the traumatic event. I'm never going to take somebody back to something awful that's happened to them in a journey and unpack it. I am not qualified to do that, and it would be unethical, and it's not necessary to do that. But we might have a look at if something traumatic has happened, we often end up there are parts of us that are exiled. So if you're familiar with internal family systems work, shamanic work dovetails beautifully in with that. So we talk about soul loss. We talk about if you were, for instance, as a child, you were a child that loved to dance and sing and spring around and just completely enjoy your beingness of being, and somebody told you you're too noisy, stop dancing. You will, as that small human, have that part of you that danced and the part of you that sang and the part of you that enjoyed life will have been silenced by a comment like that. And it will have been put into the depths of your psyche. We can't dance because we get shouted at. Nobody appreciates it. It's not safe to do that. I'm punished if I dance. So shamanic journey work, soul retrieval work is about going to find and reconnecting yourself with the parts of you that love to dance and bringing those back. How do you integrate that part of you back into your life so you can start to enjoy things more? But we don't have to go back to the initial traumatic event where you were shouted at. We don't have to go and relive things. We're just going to go and find the bits that are missing, the bits of you that you have become disconnected from. So powerful for that. So powerful. It's why I love it so much as a modality because it doesn't mean re-traumatizing anybody. It doesn't mean reliving horrible experiences. It just means you can get the best bits of you back. You can start to get an insight of where there's some healing to do. You know, shamanic journey is not a cure-all. It's often the starting point for a bigger inner work journey that moves you forward in a really positive way. I think I've probably covered it accurately there. I've jumped around a little bit, but hey, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you'll know it's like a stream of consciousness, and that's completely okay. So if this has piqued your interest and you have perhaps got patterns that you know you run in your life, behaviors that you know you repeat, relationship situations that keep coming up again and again, different people, different outfits, different scenarios, but you go, oh, this is familiar. I think I've been here before. Shamanic work is a really great way to start changing those things. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Insight is half of what we need. We can have all the intellectual awareness of a pattern we repeat, of a behavior we do, of a belief that we've got, of a trigger that we have. We can know about it, we can be aware of it, but often we can't change it because we have to go deeper. We have to go underneath the level of intellect to change a deeply ingrained thing. And this is where journey work is so freaking powerful, and it's why I love it so much. So if this has piqued your interest, I have two invitations for you. If you would like to experience a shamanic journey, you can book via the link in my show notes. I offer one-on-one hour-long sessions. They're super affordable, so you can go and have a look at that. There's a link in the show notes. If you feel quite cool to have a soul retrieval done, which is a bit of a deeper dive, and that's where I will journey for you. I won't guide you on a journey. I will do the journey work for you. It's a bit more intense. Again, super powerful. I've seen people have massive shifts when they have their lost soul parts retrieved and handed back and integrated back in. Super powerful. And if you are curious about what your power animal is and you'd like a power animal retrieval, you can also book one of those. That's where I will guide you to go and meet your power animal, and then we'll have a look at how do we integrate that power animal's qualities into your everyday life. So you can find all of that in the show notes. You can book straight away into my schedule there. If you are in Johannesburg and you would like to experience this work in person in a really amazing weekend retreat setting, I'll invite you to join me for Weaving a New Way on the 14th and 15th of March. That's happening at Windrush Studio in Fourways. And I'm going to be taking you through the Andean medicine wheel, and we're going to be working through the 4 directions and the 4 archetypes: serpent, jaguar, hummingbird, eagle. They're going to take you through the cycle of change. So this is the perfect workshop if you have something in your life that you know you want to change, but you just can't make that change stick. You got a pattern or a behavior or a work situation, a relationship situation that you are sick and tired of, but you just can't make it move. This is the workshop for you. We're going to be together for 2 days doing journey work, practical coaching, integration work that's going to be life-changing. So you can find out more about that via the show notes. And thank you for joining me as I am unleashing my weird and wonderful side out into the ether. This has been a bit of a long time coming. I've kept this side of me a little bit shut away, but it doesn't want to be shut away anymore. So I'm allowing Shaman Emma to come out and share the magical, mystical realms of the lower world, the upper world, and how we can better enjoy the middle world that we live in. So get in touch with me if you would like to find out more, and I will see you same time next week. Bye for now.